how often have you seen a grandmaster rated 2750, like Gukesh, playing with the black pieces, lose against a grandmaster rated 2600 right from the opening? In this game, Grandmaster Pavaryan plays the white pieces, and Gukesh playing the black pieces really had never a chance to come into the game. So let's just jump straight into the heart of the action. Grandmaster Pavaryan starts the game with first e4, black plays c6, d4, d5, so now we're in a Caro Kann, and white decides to go knight d2, d takes e4, knight takes e4, and now we're at the crossroad. Black should decide what he's playing, bishop f5, knight d7, or knight to f6, the so-called Tartakova-Nimzowitsch variation. And now usually white takes on f6, and after e takes f6, white plays c3. But why c3? White here wants to play bishop to d3, but then this pawn is on pre. It's not defended. And black could just take it. This would be very unpleasant. So therefore, white plays c3. However, you might think, okay, but why not knight f3 first? Well, according to Tiviakov, knight f3 here is not a great move. And the reason is that after bishop d6, bishop e2, castles, rook e8, rook e1, bishop to e6, bishop to e3, black has a very easy plan here. It's knight d7, c4, knight f8, and white is trying to create a passed pawn on the queen side, while black is trying to attack the white king. So let's go back. c3 played, bishop to d6, bishop to d3. Black castles, and now white plays knight to e2, and this is the reason why the bishop should be on d3 now, because otherwise the bishop would be boxed in on f1, which would be not that pleasant. Rook e8, putting the rook on the same file as the opponent's king, so queen c2, putting pressure along this diagonal against h7. And now it's very important to play the following move, h5. One might think h5 looks far too risky and weakens the king. Well, in a lot of variations here, the knight goes to g3, and then at some point black wants to push h4. And actually the black king on g8 is pretty safe. Even with h5 played, black might play g6 later on, but there is no need yet. So let's see what white plays. White just castles, black pushes the pawn to h4. And now the usual move here is h3, and black might play knight d7, bishop d2, knight f8, rook a e1. However, since 2018, strong players started playing bishop to f4. So this is just 5 years. It's a rather new concept, and it's working well. So black plays knight to a6. The second plan, there's either knight d7, knight f8, or knight a6 and knight to c7. And then maybe to e6, where the knight is active, controlling the center and also defending g7. And now white comes up with an almost new move here, queen to d2. And we will see the idea in a moment. So black plays h3, and this is not very accurate. Knight to c7 had been better. However, h3 played, and now rook f to e1. The bishop goes to f8, because let's assume black just took on g2. The key here is that white is ignoring this pawn on g2. He is actually using it as a shield, so it can't be defended anyway. So, knight to g3, knight to c7, bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, rook takes e8 check, knight takes e8, and white's position is far more pleasant. White is better developed, white's pieces are on better places or squares. So let's go back. Bishop f8 played. Then followed knight g3, bishop to e6, and finally, because the bishop already moved to e6, white decides to take on h3. So whenever the bishop takes back on h3, black has lost a tempo because he already moved the bishop once. So queen to d7, rook e3, preparing this move, and to some certain extent also covering h3. However, this is not working. So after bishop takes h3, white is better, but there is no tactic against the bishop on h3. And now white plays knight e4, and this move is very important because white doesn't want to exchange rooks yet. Bishop f5, rook a e1, and bishop g6 played. Here white could have obtained a much better position with queen to e2 and threatening already some possible checks on f6 and winning material here. However, white should watch out what he's doing with the bishop on d3 because it might be not well defended after the exchange on e8. So let's go back. Instead, white played rook to g3, and now it's very hard, I know, but according to the computer, black should take on e4 with the bishop, and here it looks like that white has some attack, but black is surviving everything. So let's say knight c7, bishop h6, f5, and the best for white is to sacrifice on g7, the rook, and get a perpetual check with queen to g5 and king f8 and so on, because there is also a potential discovery attack with bishop takes f5. So neither side can make any progress. Let's go back. So instead of bishop takes e4, black played queen to d5. And as you can see, this is putting the queen on the same diagonal as the king. And of course, white wants to exploit this and plays rook takes g6 and exchange sacrifice, giving the rook for a bishop, but opening this very dangerous diagonal. So white plays rook e3 here, rook to e7, and the reason why queen takes a2 is not working is queen e2. And now black is in huge trouble because on the one hand there is this check, forking queen and king, and if the queen just moves, let's say check, rook king on h8, and rook h3 leads to mate because of rook takes h5 check, g takes h5, and this is all very forced. So this is checkmate. And as said, this is simply not working, so rook e7 played instead by Gukesh, and white just continues with threatening. So queen to e2, oh sorry, looks very annoying because of this diagonal. And black shouldn't be very happy here. b5 played, and now white could have just played very calmly bishop to c2 and queen takes a2, and now very calmly queen to d1, and black cannot survive this because of this checkmate. So let's go back. Instead, Pavaryan played a4, and this move is still very fine. White has a huge advantage. Knight to c7, a takes b4, c takes b4, and now we see the idea of a takes b4. It's just grabbing this bishop, this pawn with the bishop after taking on c7. Rook takes c7, bishop takes b5, and now white will just regroup the knight, and then bishop c4 will be a threat again. So rook b8 played, bishop to d3, rook b to c8. So avoiding this idea with knight d2 and bishop c4, but this is only for the moment because the bishop can go to a6, rook d8, and just now knight to d2. Black plays queen to f7, and now it is your turn. What would you play in this position? Take a few seconds, I will wait, and then we will continue. So the obvious continuation is bishop to c4, and gaining back the material. Gukesh played rook d5, and Pavaryan played bishop to b3, and maybe preparing moves like queen f3. Very annoying. So rook b7 played, bishop takes d5, queen takes d5, and again, now it's your turn again. Try to find a way to win this position, or to win the game basically. So here white's move is again very easy, it's queen c4. White is eagerly exchanging the queens because he's up material and he has a few passed pawns. So these two pawns are playing against these three, and this pawn is playing against this pawn, so these two are passed pawns. And black cannot do anything, so black is forced to exchange the queens with queen takes c4, white recaptures, obviously, king f7 and rook e1. Regrouping the rook, it will just go to an open file, a semi-open file, because there isn't much going on the e file. And also there are no entry points here because all these squares are covered. So g5 played, h3, rook c7, knight e3, g6, rook a1, and as you can see, there is really nothing black can do here because his pawns are not so mobile and he is down one pawn. So rook d7, rook a5, nicely defending the well-placed knight, f5, king f1, king e6 attacking this knight, so the knight has to move, knight e3, rook c7 attacking the pawn, but there is rook a6 check, king f7, and now just simply knight to d1 defending the c3 pawn. Bishop h6, and now it's time for the king to enter the game, and this was the idea of king f1, to play king e2, g4 played, so black is trying to create a passed pawn, but he's not gaining anything. So king d3, rook e7, and now c4, and we see these two are passed pawns as mentioned, and they are rolling. So bishop f4, c5, g3, f takes g3, bishop takes g3, and black finally managed to create a passed pawn, but it's far too late and far too weak. And after knight to e3, black decided to call it a day and give up. As you can see, this pawn is super weak. This pawn isn't that strong, and if black decided to move it forward, then simply knight f5, winning more material. So resigning was not too early, and there weren't any chances for black, to be honest. At least not realistic chances. So as always, I hope you liked this game and this video, the analysis. If you want to see more of such videos, please feel free to subscribe and like the video. See you.